In this video, I'm going to do the front brakes. I'm just going to change the shoes. Got a set of EBCs here. The caliper's in good shape. I already kind of slid it back and forth. I'll show you in a minute. So I know the caliper's working good. So I'm not going to take the caliper off and rebuild it. Pop these out of here. One of these has a Phillips head screw in it. If I can get the lighting on here good. That's the inside one, and the outside one just slides. So this one needs to be taken off with a screwdriver. It's a number 3 Phillips head, not a number 2. So make sure you get a number 3 Phillips head so you don't ream it out. I'm going to take that one off. I'm just going to take a regular screwdriver and push the caliper back in, so I'm not worried about keeping the old pad. I was going to keep the old pad, I wouldn't do that. So we're going to take the brake cap loose, because when we push in the caliper, it's going to push the fluid back up the line, and we don't want to put pressure on the master cylinder. So I'm going to take the lid off. If there's too much fluid in, I'm going to drain a little bit out, and then this way we don't have to bleed the brakes out either. So take this off slow because I don't know how much is in there. Cap's in good shape. Rubber seal's still in there. The lid seal's in there. The rubber bushing or damper is in really good shape. It's really soft and supple. Brake fluid is full. And the fluid looks pretty clear. I don't see any cloudiness. It's not burnt. Doesn't smell burnt. If you had some burnt fluid in there, brake fluid can get hot because your brakes do not work very well. Same with your, if you had hydraulic clutch, if it's got hydraulic clutch fluid in it, that clutch fluid can go bad and actually cause the clutch to not work. Same with your brakes, but this one actually looks like it's been done not too long ago. I can see the bottom of the well down in there, and I don't see any pieces, parts, metal, shavings, or anything in the bottom. So there's a screw on our caliper. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a screwdriver, put it in between the two pads, and just pry them open. I want to do this really slow. I don't want to push too fast. Don't want to blow fluid out of the top of the master cylinder. And again, if I was worried about keeping the pads, I wouldn't do this. You can actually get a clamp. You can take this apart and separate it. But since I'm floating good, I'm going to slide my caliper inside. So basically all I did was slide that over. This shoe's going to want to fall out because this is the floater. I'm not going to let it fall out yet. I'm going to take it and just evenly press. Make sure in the center of the caliper also, you don't want to push like one side or the other side. And I'm just slowly pushing that piston back in. And what that's doing is pushing the brake fluid back up to the master cylinder. And it's compressing the caliper so the new pad fits in there. Again, make sure you stay in the middle. It should be moving super easy. If it moves harder, then you're probably going to want to rebuild your caliper or check it and make sure it's moving freely. And you want to go all the way back in, because when you put the new pad in there, the caliper's not going to want to fit. So I've got that compressed all the way back in. And make sure, again, you're watching your top too. You don't want to dump brake fluid all over your head. If the brakes have been going bad for a while and someone just keeps adding to it, what's going to happen is you're going to have too much fluid in the cylinder up there, up top, and it's just going to run out on top of your head. So there's my piston all the way back. So I'm just going to take my screwdriver, try to get the pad out of there. And as you can see by the old broken piece, it's definitely been in there a while. It's rusted, it's falling apart. Almost all the pad is gone. It's down to almost the metal. It's glazed over and grooved. And then the other side, like I said, is almost gone also. But my piston is pushed almost all the way to the back now. I'm going to push it back just a hair more. And you want to be really careful not to damage your piston. Mine's moving super easy, so if yours doesn't move easy, you don't want to tear the seal around the outside edge of it. And you don't want to damage it in any way. If you have to, take the caliper off. When you take the caliper off, you can pull it apart, and then you can just take a vise or a clamp and squeeze that together slowly. If you do decide to take it off though, you're going to have to bleed your brakes when you're done. So next thing is I got to get the inside pad out. Again, number 3 Phillips. Press firmly so you don't strip it out. Get them in there super hard. and your caliper will slide back and forth. That's completely normal. It's a floating caliper, so it will float left and right. And then once you get that out, I'm going to take a small screwdriver and pop that out from the inside. And that may work right there. And once you break it loose, again, I'm not going to pry on the caliper itself. I'm just trying to get between the metal and the pad itself. And that's not catching. I'm going to grab a little punch or something to knock that through. I'll take a Phillips head and I'm just going to tap it from the inside and knock the other one out. Some of them are stuck in there more than others. So I'm going to take a little more encouragement to get out of there. That one came out fairly easy. I'm just going to stick a rag up in there and clean out the inside edge of it. Make sure there's no rust on the edge. It popped out pretty easy, so there shouldn't be any. And the old pad compared to the new one, side by side. Let me get those where you can see them a little bit better. There's if I can hold it in front of the camera correctly. Inside pad, same thing. You can see there, this one's glazed over, it's shiny, swirl marks all over it, and the other one's a nice new clean pad. So definitely time to change those. And this one you can actually see the metal between the friction plate. Okay, when I put these back in, I want to put my inside pad in first, or my outside pad in first. Sometimes these actually will, they're thick enough that you can't get the other pad in because this one fits back in the caliper. So, okay, when you go to put the outside edge in, there's a groove in the top of this. If you look on the other side, there's actually a stop. This little metal piece right here keeps it from spinning around on the inside. So when you hit the brakes, it doesn't just spin. So basically, let me see if I can get a better shot. This little tab right here will line up with that notch. So I'm going to pre-align it to where I think it's close to it. Then I can kind of look from the other side and feel for it. And you got to make sure you're even, so if you tilt one way or the other, it's not going to slide back in the hole. It has to be flush because it fits in that piston pretty good. Just like butter. Only took a little bit longer than I planned. Again, caliper's going to float back and forth, which is normal. Piston's pushed all the way back in to where it's bottomed out. And once I got that one up in there, then I can slide my inside one in. Take my screw, start it by hand. I'm just going to run that until it stops. I don't want to over tighten it. Okay, and again, they have to be flush. Now the caliper is 7 millimeters. It looks like I need to push back in a little bit further. So when it gets to the point I put the wheel back on, I'll probably have to open that up a little more to get it to clear the caliper. It's going to be really close, but I may have to push back a little more. So when I do, I'm going to have to be careful not to damage my shoe. So I went and slid the wheel back on the bike. I haven't tightened it down yet. I had the caliper, it actually fit in, the rotor fit in between the brake pads pretty good. If for some reason you're stuck, you may have to pry that caliper apart a little bit more. The caliper also floats left and right, so when you put the wheel up in there, you may have to slide the caliper left or right to make it fit. I went ahead and put my speedometer cable on before I tighten the bolts down. That way it's in the correct position. You can rotate that up, down, left, right, wherever you need it. So I've got it where I want it. I'm gonna get the torque specs for the forks. I've got new nuts on there and new lock washers just because it's the front wheel. And then the other thing is when we push the caliper back, as you can see now the master cylinder is almost to the top, so someone's been adding fluid to it because those pads were getting low. So I need to get something and get a little bit of that fluid out, because when I put that cup back in there, I'm just going to get brake fluid everywhere. So I'm going to take a little bit of that out, and then we'll put the caliper back, or the. So after I get some of the fluid out of there, we'll put the rubber back in there and put the cap back on. All right, there's the torque chart. The front forks don't actually have a torque setting on them. So I know it's a number 8 bolt. It's 125 thread. So I'm gonna go 16 foot-pounds. I'm gonna put a little bit of a thread lock on there, removable thread lock, not permanent, and go with that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift the wheel up with my foot. I'm gonna take the nut and washer off and basically just drop a thread lock on each one of these. Again, removable thread lock, not permanent. And again, I don't want a lot on there. I just want enough on there to keep them from backing off. The lock washers should keep it in place. If that spins around, it'll tighten. So I'm going to take all 4 off, do that, and then we'll torque them. I've got my speedometer in place. I've lifted the wheel up as far as I can. I've started both these sides pretty much evenly. So the last thing to do is just tighten it up and torque it down. And we'll tighten both sides evenly. Basically, I'm just smashing the lock washer right now. And you want to tighten one side, then the other side, so the cap comes up evenly. If for some reason you notice one side is open further than the other, stop what you're doing, back it off, and then raise it up in there so they go up evenly. And again, just till it clicks. That's it. Even though it doesn't feel like it's tight enough, it's plenty tight enough. You gotta remember you're tapped into aluminum there, and you can strip it out if you go too deep. So torque both sides. The wheel's on. Make sure you use brake cleaner on anything that you've touched with your hand, any type of degreaser on your brakes before you start using them. The degreaser, the mineral spirits or the mineral oils in them can actually get into your brakes and cause premature failure. So make sure you spray all this down with a brake parts cleaner. That way you don't have any finger residue or oil from your skin or anything on them. Now these cables are easy to want to over tighten. So don't over tighten it. You don't need to death grip it. It just needs to be snug. I like these vice grips. They have a curve in the middle of them. They're perfect for these. That way you don't actually strip it off with a pair of flat pliers. And I've already hand tightened it, so it shouldn't be much more than hand tight. And again, you just want to snug it up to the point where it stops turning. And then go maybe 1/8 of a turn past it. So there's my stopping point. 1/8 of a turn, and I'm done. I'll check it after about a week, make sure if it's loose, I can tighten it up a little bit. If not, then it should be good to go. So that leads me to my last little culprit there, getting the brake cover back on. Some of you probably do this first, you can do it last. There's no really order to it. Most likely if you're clumsy, which I normally am, I'm surprised I didn't spill any of it. You want to get that out of there first, or get the cover on it back first. So you're not splashing brake fluid everywhere, but since I've got all the engine parts or all the paint off except for the fender. Okay, so I got my fluid down to where I think it needs to be. There's a little silver ring on the inside, as you can see. This side's a little bit over, this side's a little bit under, so when I put my cap on, it should be good to go. Just put the rubber, I guess this is a dust boot, in slowly. If you see fluid coming up out of the sides, stop. So you don't make a big mess out of it. That should go in there nice and easy. I'm just going slow, so if I do have too much fluid, when I push this in, I can feel the fluid underneath this bubble, so I need to take a little bit more out. That should fit pretty much flush on there. And as you can see, I'm making full contact, so I've got brake fluid all over the bottom, so I need to take another little bit out. So with just a little bit more out, again, I'm going to put the cap in, or the dust boot in. Dust boot feels good. Make sure if I've got any air in there, I'm going to push the air out of it. I can feel the fluid right underneath the edge of it. Sorry about the camera there. So I know I'm good. I got all the air out of there. So I'm not going to push any air down through my brakes. So I put it in, I got a little gap there. And again, I'm just pushing it, and you can hear the air come out. So that's a nice seal, and then I'm going to put my cap back on. And these are fine thread aluminum, so make sure you don't cross thread it when you put it on there. And again, just like everything else, it doesn't need to be super tight, it just needs to be tight. Don't want to crank it down where you can't get it off there anymore. I'm going to grab a clean towel, wipe off any brake fluid I got on the top. Again, if you did spill any brake fluid anywhere else, make sure you clean it up good, especially if it's dot free. And there's the front wheel back on, so we're one step closer to riding again. New brake, new rotor. And that's it for today. Hope everyone enjoyed the video. Please click like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to continue with the process with me. And hopefully in a couple more weeks, they'll be back on the road.